Sleepless nights can be frustrating. Think about the last time that you missed just a few hours of sleep and how you felt the next day. Maybe you only slept for 4 hours, but the next day you maybe felt less productive and maybe just less happy. Now imagine going days without sleeping. That is unfortunately what some people with insomnia are dealing with, and it's becoming more prevalent. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention has actually considered it now a public health epidemic. So today I want to share with you some researched supplements, which is hormone, some nutrients, and then herbs that have been shown to be able to help with insomnia. And until we get to that point, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and there is a free download on 5 ways to improve gut health in the description below. So let's dive on in and start talking about these supplements. So what is insomnia? Symptoms of insomnia include difficulty falling asleep, sleeping really lightly, waking up in the middle of a sleep, having difficulty then falling back asleep, or not sleeping at all, just staying awake the whole night. And if you're suffering from insomnia, I'm sure you know this already. There are 3 ways that insomnia is categorized. The first being transient, the second short-term, and the third chronic. Transient is just about a week of sleeping difficulties. It might be a week of staying up all night, but often it's triggered by something more short-term, like maybe a really stressful week in work or life. The second one, the short-term, is insomnia that lasts about 6 months. And it could be from a stressful situation, it might be from something else. And then the third one is chronic insomnia. Now, sometimes there are underlying medical conditions that are causing insomnia. Might be a serious condition, so you always want to get that looked into by a doctor and ruled out. But if there isn't a serious medical condition causing the insomnia, then it's considered primary insomnia, and that is what we're going to focus on in this video today. As you already know, sleep is really important. So lack of sleep and insomnia can cause short and long-term health issues. Some short-term symptoms that people suffering from insomnia might experience include fatigue, hard time getting things done the next day, emotional distress, maybe depression or low mood, psychosocial issues, somatic pain, and more. And if these symptoms weren't enough, oftentimes these lead to social struggle keeping up with friends and community. For example, if you're just so tired that you can't and don't have the desire to meet up with your community, that can lead to isolation and loneliness. Loneliness leads to other longer term health issues. So you can see it's a spiral. And in functional nutrition, we're always thinking about, okay, what's the root cause of some of these issues? And certainly, you know, something like sadness, the root cause might be lack of sleep from all these different components that are then, affected by that lack of sleep. Some long-term issues associated with insomnia include cardiovascular disease, so heart and vessel, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, depression, clogged arteries, and even colon cancer. Now, if you're struggling with this, I'm sure you've already gone to your physician, let them know, and you maybe tried some medications. Oftentimes, medications come with side effects, right? And then when it comes to sleep medications, what a lot of people experience is that it might help them to get to sleep, but they're often not sleeping deep, and a lot of times they're not waking up fully rested like they used to before they started to have sleep issues. So medications, certainly I'm not giving medication advice. They're a tool. If you've tried them, had success, that's wonderful. But this video is just gonna share some more approaches that you could try if either medication just isn't working for you like what you had hoped, or if you wanna try something else before trying the medications. Further, it can be common for people to build up a tolerance to sleep medications, meaning if you're using them years after years after years, you might find that you start to need a higher and higher dose to get the same effect that you used to get. Now, the supplements that we're going to talk today are hormones, nutrients, and herbs, which all are either found in foods that we eat or naturally produced in our body. It might just be that we have low amounts, like maybe we're not getting enough from the foods that we eat to be able to, for our body's processes to function optimally. Think about what your diet or your eating was like when you were a child. You know, maybe you grew up on a lot of these lower nutrient dense foods, maybe not a lot of produce or, you know, really nutrient dense things like you would find at a farmer's market. If that's the case, you maybe were set up to have some low nutrient stores, you know, from the get-go. Now as an adult, you're seeing some of the ramifications of that. So with nutrients, I'm going to talk about 7 of these different supplements, but I want to first say that with talking about different minerals and vitamins and amino acids, those we can actually test cellular levels of in blood levels, but cellular levels tend to be more accurate because it's closer to like our storage form of these nutrients. So in my practice at my clinic, Oswald Digestive Clinic, we can run panels of 30 plus of these different vitamins, amino acids, and minerals. And sometimes clients will come to us just because they want that done. They want a dietitian to review it all, to review their medical history and really help them with a good solid supplement plan and an eating plan to go with it. You know, we find that we often need to add supplements to help get our clients the success that they do get, replace stores, but we're always looking to then use food for maintenance because food truly is medicine, and there's synergistic properties that happen in food that you can't just get from a supplement. So both of those have their place, and that's again what we as dietitians help people with. So without further ado, let's dive on in and talk about these 7 supplements to help with insomnia. The first one we're going to talk about is melatonin. I'm sure you knew I was going to talk about this. It's this natural hormone that's produced in our brain. It actually, there's a kind of bell curve of its production. When the sun goes down, about 3 hours after that, is in that 3-hour time slot is when we have the most melatonin production. So what's interesting is that if somebody's not falling asleep in that window, you know, nearer to sunset, then they might notice that they get a second wind, and that could simply be the melatonin levels falling in their body and them getting re-energized again. So melatonin is this natural hormone that's produced, but we can also supplement the hormone to kind of help give us that extra kick to get our circadian rhythm back into balance, that sleep-wake cycle. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you start falling asleep at the same time every day, like going to bed at the same time, you probably notice that it's over time easier to just fall asleep. If you wake up at the same time too, it gets so much easier to wake up. You might notice that you just start waking up without an alarm because your body gets into this natural circadian rhythm, the natural sleep-wake cycles. And so this hormone melatonin, we can supplement with it to try to kick our body back into that circadian rhythm. But once we're there, hopefully we then don't need to rely on the supplement as much because we can just rely on our body's own natural melatonin production. So what's the research? In an analysis of 19 different studies involving 1,683 participants, yes, I checked my notes, so about 1,500 participants, right, 1,600, they found that using melatonin helped people fall asleep quicker. It improved their sleep quality, and it improved the amount of time that they slept for. Really the triple whammy, right? So some people do experience some side effects. They're not serious, but they include headache, morning drowsiness, nausea, and some slight dizziness. And if that happens to you, then this just isn't the right fit for you. At least you tried. You know when you can try the next thing. Always weighing the risks, potential risks versus potential benefits, right? That's what medicine is, what we should always be doing. Now, I have clients who ask me about whether melatonin is addicting or not. You know, they're afraid that if they start taking it, that they're gonna have to need to rely on it because their body is just gonna stop producing it because it's coming in from supplemental form. So it's a really interesting thought and question. I love when my clients, are thinking like this. The reality is we just don't truly know long term if that happens or not. Short term, it's really safe. I wouldn't worry about it at all. It's just helping to kind of reset that sleep-wake cycle. But long term, I would really try to encourage getting that cycle back in balance, figuring out the root causes that might be preventing you from falling asleep, doing other interventions than just using some of these supplements. And then hopefully, a few months down the road, maybe even a few days or weeks, you won't need to use the melatonin. You won't even have to worry about, if over the years it's going to stop your body's natural production. They are made in 3 and 5 milligram capsules. There are some higher amounts on the market, but I would encourage people to start with a lower amount and then ramp up only if you need to. As you might know, the supplement industry isn't really well regulated. There are a lot of poor quality supplements on the market. And because of that, I want to help you guys find good quality supplements. So I am linking them in the description below. Everything I talk about today, the ones that I have good access to, good quality products, I'm linking in the description below. But know that this is just me sharing my knowledge with you. This isn't medical advice. Always check with your main healthcare provider before starting something new, because I can't possibly know everything that's going on with you, and there certainly might be contraindications to some of the supplements, medication interactions, so always check with your provider first. But again, because I want you to have access to good quality supplement brands that are actually doing third-party testing and really careful about where they're sourcing from, checking heavy metal levels, and more, I'm going to link them below. So the second one that we are going to talk about is actually an amino acid called Ltryptophan. Ltryptophan is naturally found in foods like eggs, milk, cheese, fish, and poultry. It's an amino acid, and it's the precursor to serotonin, which you might know as the happy chemical, and that's actually a precursor to melatonin. I'm gonna show you a diagram here that you might find interesting. So if we're not getting enough L-tryptophan from our eating, the foods we eat, maybe somebody is vegan, for example, and maybe they're having a hard time getting all those amino acids from plant foods. I know before I give mean comments below, I know with a vegan plan, you can, work at it more and try to get access, and some people do get access to enough protein and amino acids, but it just takes a lot more mindfulness and more nutrition education. And so L-tryptophan, the amino acid, is needed to make that melatonin, which we just talked about how important that is to help trigger sleep. The research on L-tryptophan is done with between 1 to 15 gram doses. And interestingly, the benefits were found to be just as good with the 1 gram dose than the 15 gram dose. Over-the-counter amounts are usually about 500. Again, not a recommendation, check with your healthcare provider. But what the research showed is that with using L-tryptophan, it helps people fall asleep quicker. It helps them sleep deeper, and because of sleeping deeper, it prevents the amount of time that people are waking up during the night. The third supplement I want to share with you is called Niacinamide, or otherwise called nicotinamide, and it's just the version of vitamin B3 that's found in our blood. And like melatonin and like tryptophan that we talked about already, it has a really important role in this process that is needed to function properly for us to be able to properly fall asleep. And so try to bear with me on this, but as mentioned, tryptophan gets converted into serotonin, right, and melatonin for sleep. Well, it can also get converted into niacin. Now, if a lot of it's getting converted into niacin, then there's not as much left to get converted into the melatonin. So let's then rewind, make sure we're getting enough of that niacin with nicotinamide, and if so, then more of that tryptophan can get converted into the melatonin, which we know the benefits of helping us fall asleep quicker, improving sleep quality, improving length of sleep. As you can see, it's a complicated pathway, but it's a good thing because it means that there's different plans of attack that we can have to help you get rid of this insomnia that you've been struggling with. So the research shows that using niacinamide significantly improves our REM sleep, that really deep restorative sleep. There are different lotions and creams that you can purchase that has this in it. There's also supplemental form. Some of these work better for some people than for other people, so sometimes it is, when it gets down to it, a little bit of trial and error. Try the lotions, you know, if that works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, then maybe still worth trying the supplement, right? And seeing how that goes. Again, weighing the potential risks versus the potential benefits, and always checking with your healthcare provider. The next nutrient I want to talk about is magnesium. Magnesium is involved in over 300 chemical processes in our body, and epidemiological data suggests that most people aren't getting enough from food, especially as we age. It's estimated that about 70% of people have low magnesium stores. Magnesium can be found in nuts, seeds, beans, whole grains, and dark leafy vegetables. Pumpkin seeds are a really great source if you want to try to get your magnesium from food. That's what I would recommend having a bit of every day, like a quarter of a cup. And so, as you can imagine, most Americans aren't eating enough of these foods, which could be contributing to the low stores that we're seeing in people, you know, low magnesium levels, not just blood magnesium. Your body regulates that a bit better, but we're talking about like magnesium stores that are going to help and optimize those 300 plus processes that magnesium is involved with in the body, especially for our metabolism, especially for our brain health. So magnesium was studied on 46 elderly individuals, and the research showed that with magnesium supplementation, it improved their ability to fall asleep and improved the amount of time that they were sleeping. Furthermore, they noticed that these individuals were exercising more during the day, you know, as their sleep improved, which is really great side effect. Like we were talking about at the beginning of this video, how poor sleep can cause a spiral of negative issues. So now these 46 individuals, significantly more exercise as the magnesium was helping them sleep better. And you know what's gonna probably happen then? With them exercising more, having more activity, they're probably going to be happier, building more community, but also most of you probably know that exercise can then help with sleep further. So this is what I'm kind of saying with how we can use some of these supplements to just trigger the body to get back into the sleep-wake cycle, to then implement some of these other things, like, okay, now this person has more energy, they can exercise more, that exercise is going to help them fall asleep, and over time hopefully they won't have to rely on supplements to get to sleep. There are many different forms of magnesium that are sold on the market. There are gummies, there are powders, there are capsules, there are liquids, different kinds of drinks and teas and things. I would say just careful with some magnesium products. There's two things to it. The first one, if it's a drink, look at the ingredients, see what they're adding. You know, oftentimes they'll add these different fake flavorings and colorings and just other things that you might be wanting to avoid. And the second one is that there are different forms of magnesium. So some of them might cause loose stool in the wrong person and might not be as well absorbed. In fact, a lot of the over-the-counter magnesium supplements aren't really great quality because these store owners are just wanting the biggest profit, right? So they're going to be putting on the shelf the cheaper magnesium products, or the consumer might not be willing to pay the price of the higher quality magnesium supplements, which is why then the cheaper ones get put on the shelf. And they're usually the forms like the oxides, the citrates that are not as well absorbed. So once again, because of this, I want to make your guys' life easier. There is one linked in the description below. Now there are 3 more nutrients that do have some research for insomnia: vitamin B12, glycine, and thiamine. But this is so that we don't have this video running into an hour or longer. We just limited to the ones that we talked about today. Those 3, they don't have as much research, but it's 3 more things to look into if you're still struggling. Now I want to transition a bit and talk about 3 herbal plant nutrients, just herbs that can help with sleep too. Valerian, ashwagandha, and hops, and we're going to talk about why. So these herbs, they don't have a direct effect on that sleep cycle that I showed you and that we were talking about with the other nutrients, but they do and can have a really nice relaxing, calming effect, which can be really great if somebody is struggling from insomnia, from some like major life stressors, even like minor stressors that are just really getting to them or they're really ruminating on before falling asleep. These herbs could be a great go-to for those things. And if you're a bit adverse to capsule sort of supplements, these things you can often incorporate into food or just find a tea that has and is made of them. Valerian root. Valerian is this tall flowering plant, and the root is what is used to make what Eastern medicine would call just medicines. And it's been used for thousands of years as a relaxant. So it's especially helpful if the insomnia might be anxiety triggered and just for kind of relieving anxiety in general. There is one clinical trial that shows valerian extract to be comparable to oxazepam, which is an anti-anxiety medication, but other research was more inconclusive and didn't show as much benefit. So overall, results are inconclusive, but I think it's something that could be safe and for the right person, worth trialing. So valerian root, you can buy it already prepackaged into tea bags, or you can make your own, just mixing a teaspoon of the roots into like a glass of whatever milk you have, or maybe trying water, and having that about 1 to 3 times a day. And one last caution, due to its really relaxing effect, you should, the first time you try it, not operate heavy machinery, don't drive, just in case it really works for you and it gives you that really strong relaxing effect. So the next plant that I'm going to talk about is called ashwagandha. So ashwagandha, like valerian, is a fruit-producing bush, and the roots, like valerian, is what is used to be that kind of medicine or that herb that people can take to find benefit from. So ashwagandha, it's called an adaptogen because it basically helps the body adapt to stressors. There are these compounds, these phytochemicals in the ashwagandha that are thought to believe to have that relaxing effect that ashwagandha is notable for, that stress relieving effect. So if the insomnia might be stress triggered, ashwagandha would be a pretty, for most people, safe intervention to just try for a few weeks and see if it helps. In a 2-month study on ashwagandha, it was shown to significantly reduce people's anxiety compared to placebo. Ashwagandha also comes in a variety of different forms, 2 to 6 grams a day, 1 to 2 times a day is often what's used. Can be drinking the same way as the valerian, but most people do not like the taste. You can also buy it in capsule form or in tincture form, whatever works best for each individual. So last but not least, hops. You guys might be surprised by this. Yes, the same hops as is in beer. So if you're a beer lover, you might find this information really interesting. Hops is a prickly vine with these yellowish cone-shaped flowers. And the oils extracted from those flowers is what's used for the medicinal herbal part that has research showing to help with insomnia. So to share a bit of interesting history, farmhands that were working in these hop fields, they actually started to get sleepy. And that's about the time that hops started to get researched for its sedative and kind of sleepiness properties. And it's what it's most notable for today, even though Native Americans have been using it for a long time for all sorts of different ailments. So the research was done on 2 milligram capsules of hops, and what they found was that these participants no longer were up so much during the night. They were able to sleep through the night better, and they were able to just reset that circadian rhythm, that, sleep-wake cycle. What's also interesting, what this study notes, is that that amount in those capsules is the same amount in one can of non-alcoholic beer. Interesting, right? So you could actually try drinking a can of non-alcoholic beer. Don't do the alcoholic, that might mess up your sleep. So stick with non-alcoholic for now at least. And so you could try that to see if the hops in it helps with your sleep. Really easy intervention, right? Certainly there are also supplements, there are tinctures that you can use to dose it if you don't like non-alcoholic beer. And that brings us to the wrap-up section. So now you know 7 different supplements, amino acids and nutrients and herbs that all work in slightly different ways that can really help improve and maybe even get rid of insomnia for somebody, which is really great. I've actually recently seen this happen where we just added magnesium and this individual was able to kind of reset their sleep-wake cycles. There might have been a component of stress reduction that triggered this too, and her insomnia went away, which is always great to see. So I hope this was helpful for you. Again, check out the description, the links in the description. And there is that free guide, 5 ways to improve gut health, that you can download. Also, like, comment, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Happy sleeping.